An Indian origin scientist, Ankur Gupta, has developed a battery technology that can charge phones and laptops in just 1 minute. This technology can even fully charge an electric vehicle in just 10 minutes, which usually takes 8 to 10 hours to charge. Plus, you must have also noticed in today's phone batteries that over time, your battery's performance keeps decreasing. Its charging time increases and it also starts discharging quickly. This happens because the lithium-ion batteries in modern smartphones only last for about 800 to 900 charging cycles. Simply put, they work properly for 1 to 2 years, and after that, their ability to store energy drastically decreases. But Ankur Gupta and his team have developed a new battery technology. It is such that even after using it for 100 years, it will work just like brand new. Now the question arises, how did they invent this groundbreaking technology? So while working as a scientist and professor at the University of Colorado Boulder, he solved that big mystery, which had prevented all the scientists in the world from making a fast-charging battery for the past 2 to 3 decades. Now, what was that mystery because of which no scientist was able to make a super-fast charger? Do you know, and how did our Indian origin scientists bring such a big breakthrough here? Well, this is a very fascinating story in itself because after this breakthrough, now we can turn something into a battery that we've been using all the time, while sleeping, waking up, dancing, singing every moment. I'm talking about this, which in different forms are used quite commonly in almost all electronic devices. Yes, that's right, capacitors. How did scientists realize the potential of a capacitor to be used as a battery, and what are the challenges? Actually, you must have noticed that whenever our fan or something like that breaks down, the first thing we replace is the capacitor. And then whenever we buy a new capacitor, so the shopkeeper puts it in the switchboard, takes it out, and then shows us sparks coming out of it to prove that it is working. Now what the shopkeeper does is, you must have noticed 2 things in this. One is that the shopkeeper puts it in the switchboard for only 2 to 3 seconds. And the second thing is, it's only for 2 to 3 seconds. Even when it gets electricity, that capacitor produces a pretty intense spark. And now, what does this tell you? This means that a capacitor can also store electrical energy inside it, just like a battery. But unlike batteries, it only takes a few seconds to do this, which means if we want to make a battery technology with super fast charging, a capacitor is a very strong contender. And in many ways, it can even beat traditional batteries. But before using it as a battery, we have to solve one of its drawbacks, which was the biggest puzzle in the battery industry. As quickly as these capacitors charge, they also discharge just as quickly. To put it simply in scientific terms, its energy density is quite low. If you're a scientist or a science enthusiast like me, you'll think there's only one problem. Solving this should be as easy as snapping your fingers, but this is exactly where you'll be wrong. Inside and outside both the battery and the capacitor, things are more or less the same. Both have a box with 2 electrodes attached, and both store energy, but there is a small fundamental difference between the two. This gives capacitors the ability to charge quickly, but gives batteries the ability to store more energy. On the other hand, now to understand why this happens, it's very important for you to first understand the basics of a battery. Only then can you view capacitors from a battery's perspective. Don't worry, it's mind-blowing. You'll just need a few dead frogs' legs and some salt. About 200 years ago, surprisingly, because of these, battery technology was invented. Watch this video a little carefully. Like here, when this chef Maharaj sprinkles a little salt on the legs of these dead frogs, this happens. Wow, how did the legs suddenly come alive, as if someone put a battery in them? Do you know why this happens? The science behind this is quite interesting. Modern batteries are inspired by it. We'll talk about this in just a little while. But you know what? This is the beauty of science. It looks at a problem and constantly brings new evolutions to fix it. In 1780, Italian physicist Luigi Galvani made a discovery. When he saw the legs of dead frogs twitching, he thought it happened because a special kind of electrical energy was generated in the frog's legs, called animal electricity, which made them twitch. Yes, I'm not joking, that's what he believed. In fact, he even demonstrated this in his lab. He took two wires made of different metals, connected them at one end, and attached the other ends to the dead frog's leg, and it really worked. As soon as he touched the frog's legs with those wires, they immediately started twitching. Galvani had really made quite a unique discovery, or at least that's what he thought. Actually, when Galvani showed this same demonstration to his friend Alessandro Volta, who was not only a physicist but also a chemist, he immediately identified it. That the electricity was not being generated because of the frog's legs, but rather because of using two different metals. To prove this, he also conducted an experiment. In place of the frog's legs, he placed a cloth soaked in salty water and showed that the same current was generated. This then became the world's first true battery called the Voltic pile. And the most fascinating part, even today the batteries in the market, including lithium-ion batteries, which we use every day, in our phones, laptops, and so on, all of them work on the same principle, the same concept on which the Voltic pile used to work. Now the next question is, how do these batteries actually work? What did Luigi miss after all? So, essentially, in batteries, it's just that when two different metals are physically kept separate from each other, and they are connected to each other through a conductive medium like a wire or an electrolyte. That's how it works. What happens is that the charged particles of one metal, that is electrons and ions, start moving towards the other metal. And this movement of charged particles is what electricity is. Like, for example, take lithium-ion batteries. On one side, there is lithium metal, and on the other side, there is cobalt metal, and between them, there is a semi-permeable membrane. Now, lithium is less stable than cobalt, and that's why its electrons leave it and start moving towards cobalt through the wire, and lithium's newly formed ions also start moving there through the semi-permeable membrane. These electrons then travel through the phone's circuit towards the cobalt side, and that's how your phone works. And when all the lithium ions and electrons come to one side, the battery gets drained. So now the next question is, how does the phone get charged again? Well, when we are using the phone, lithium has almost completely moved towards cobalt, but whatever happens between lithium and cobalt, this entire process is reversible. If we provide energy from outside through a charger, then the lithium and the electrons that have moved to the cobalt side, they return to their original side, and in this way, the battery gets charged again. So principally, it is just that simple, and now here comes the million-dollar question: why is it difficult to reduce charging time in traditional batteries? If the mechanism is so simple, then why have we been charging our phones with just a 10-watt mobile charger for so many years? In fact, even the fast chargers that have come into the market now only provide 45 watts, 67 watts, or at most 120 watts of power. Why is that? Even our electric vehicles take 8 hours to charge? I mean, to reverse the chemical reactions in the battery, we just have to provide electrical energy, so why is this process so complicated? Why has this been the biggest problem in battery charging technology so far? And also, why it is said that you shouldn't charge your phone with someone else's fast charger, your phone will get damaged. So well, to understand this, let's first understand the basics. So, how quickly electrical energy will transfer into your phone or electric vehicle? That is called power, which is represented in watts, and this watt depends on two things. One is voltage and the other is current. And that's why when you use a 10-watt charger, you'll see it on there. It is written as 5 volts 2 amperes, meaning 5 times 2 is equal to a 10-watt charger. And similarly, if you have an 18-watt charger, it will be written as 6 volts and 3 amperes or 9 volts and 2 amperes. Now, what exactly are voltage and current, and why do they matter so much for wattage, that is, for energy transfer? Well, voltage means what is the potential difference between the positive and negative poles of an electrical circuit. To give a simple example, it's like how much slope there is between the two, because the greater the slope, the stronger the attraction. Now, on the other hand, current means how many charged particles are slipping down this slope and entering the mobile at a given time. Its exact value is that if the voltage, meaning the slope, is higher, then the electrons will flow faster and your phone will charge faster. Now in this situation, you'll naturally think, so what's the problem then, brother? Just increase the voltage, right? If you simply increase the voltage, then the phone or electric vehicle will charge quickly. Exactly. At this point, things begin to take a risky turn as the situation becomes increasingly precarious. If you increase the voltage too much, the current becomes so powerful that its electric field, meaning its force, is no longer limited to just the wire's insulation. Despite the insulation, it starts interfering with the surrounding electrical things. And the current also starts jumping into nearby wires or circuits, which causes arcing and sparking, and a lot of heat is generated as well. Now just imagine what would happen to your phone or electric vehicle in such a situation. Yes, their circuits would burn out and explode. Because the metals in batteries that lose electrons are mostly among those metals that are quite reactive. And now in the same way, if you increase the current, you will still have the problem of overheating. The same result will come out because of it. And that is why this was just like a checkmate for scientists for quite a while. So now how can capacitors come to the rescue here? Well, you might remember I said that capacitors are just like batteries. There is just one small fundamental difference in them, which gives them the ability to charge quickly, but batteries don't have that ability. Look, an ordinary capacitor has only three things: a container, two metal electrodes inside it, and an insulator made of plastic or something similar between those electrodes. That's it. A container, two metal electrodes, a semi-permeable membrane between them that only allows ions to pass, and lastly, an electrolyte. So you can see a modern upgraded capacitor or supercapacitor technically has exactly the same things that a battery has. So then, where does the difference come in? You might remember we learned earlier that in batteries, the ions are formed from the atoms of metal A, and energy is stored in those chemical reactions. Now, what happens in supercapacitors is that they completely eliminate the hassle of converting energy from electrical to chemical and then from chemical to electrical. The electrolyte present in it already has ions dissolved in it. So as soon as the metals get current, without creating their own ions, one side's metal becomes the positive electrode and the other side's becomes the negative. And then oppositely charged ions present in the electrolyte start sticking to both of them. That means, first of all, electrical energy is stored here in the form of electrostatic bonds. What is this bond basically? When you rub a balloon and stick pieces of paper to it, even then, energy is stored in the form of these electrostatic bonds. And the paper sticks to the balloon. Then as soon as the paper comes off the balloon, the energy stored in the form of electrostatic bonds is also released, and the same principle is used in supercapacitors as well, meaning that here electrical energy is stored in the bonds as electrical energy, which is why these supercapacitors charge very quickly. And secondly, they don't require any reactive metals, which is why they can easily withstand high voltages without bursting or burning. In fact, the primary reason why capacitors are used in electronic circuits is that they can protect the circuits from burning due to voltage fluctuations. So, all in all, as we have analytically concluded, if capacitors are further upgraded to be used as batteries, then directly we can hit two targets with one arrow. And it is this very insight that Indian origin scientist Ankur Gupta and the team attempted to make a supercapacitor using a method involving metal electrodes where ions adhere to the electrodes and energy is stored in the resulting electrostatic bonds. Increase the surface area so that there is more space for the ions to stick, and that way more energy can be stored. But you can see there is a big catch here. To increase the surface area, the size of the electrodes also has to be increased, and ultimately that makes the supercapacitor, the size of the batteries will also increase. Now, to deal with this, many scientists started coating the supercapacitor electrodes with a porous material like activated coal. Because as you know, the more holes and pockets there are on a surface, the more its surface area will increase. Basically, the surface area will get an extra dimension. And that's why, in principle, it should have worked. But again, bad news, it didn't happen like that. There was no drastic increase seen in the energy storage capacity of supercapacitors. For example, suppose this is a small lithium-ion battery. If you want to store the same amount of energy in a modern supercapacitor, you would have to connect 6 supercapacitors, each about the size of a big Eveready battery together. Only then can you store the same energy in them. Now, this happens because the porous coating electrodes that have been designed so far had very random connections between their pores. Because of this, whenever you needed to extract the charge, some of the charge would get trapped in the maze of those random pores, and the energy stored in them would technically become useless for us. So it was very important to make sure that every charge covers the minimum distance and faces no resistance, and reaches its final destination. And keeping this in mind, right now Ankur Gupta has designed such a formula which helps to visualize these tiny pores present on the electrodes and the random connections between them like an electrical circuit. That means until now the structure of the electrodes used to be quite random, but now they will be mathematically structured and can be made with such precision through 3D printing that the surface area will increase exponentially. That means from now on, in just a short time, you'll start seeing gadgets, phones, and EVs around you that will get fully charged in just a few seconds. But if we talk about battery technology, it's non-stop here at all. The future is really very bright. Because there are some contenders who are trying to make the power of batteries unlimited. For example, a new Chinese startup is working on nuclear-powered batteries, which will have a radioactive element like nickel-63 inside. They claim that this battery can supply electricity continuously for at least 50 years. Once you put it in your phone, you won't need to charge it for the rest of your life. This is nothing short of magic, right? Well, magic today is going to be a technology of the future. So which technology do you trust more? Which technology will be completed quickly and will soon be seen on our consumer shelves? Is it possible that one technology will overtake the other? Or could these two technologies combine to create a hybridized version? The future holds endless possibilities. With advancing technology, even the impossible is becoming possible. If you found this video informative, please hit the like button.